Welcome back. Tonight, we're venturing into the heart of Nevada, the Silver State, where the vast desert stretches endlessly under scorching sun and frigid starlit nights. But beneath Nevada's stunning landscapes and glittering casino lights lies something far more sinister. This is a place where people simply vanish without a trace, swallowed by the unforgiving wilderness as if the earth itself opened up and claimed them. What you're about to hear are 3 real stories of tourists who came to Nevada seeking adventure, mystery, or just a simple getaway. Instead, they found something else entirely. These aren't urban legends or campfire tales. These are documented cases that have baffled investigators, haunted families, and left more questions than answers. Nevada's vast emptiness makes it the perfect place for someone to disappear forever. With over 110 square miles of mostly uninhabited desert, ancient mine shafts that drop hundreds of feet into darkness, and mountain ranges so remote that some have never been fully explored, the Silver State has earned a reputation as a place where the missing stay missing. The cases we'll explore tonight share common threads that will chill you to the bone. Each person vanished under circumstances that defy logic. Each left behind security footage, cell phone records, or physical evidence that only deepens the mystery. And each disappearance occurred in areas where others have warned, don't go there alone. As we dive into these stories, remember that these were real people, with families, dreams, and lives cut short by whatever lurks in Nevada's vast emptiness. Their stories serve as warnings for anyone who thinks they can conquer the desert alone. So turn down the lights, because what happened to these 3 individuals in Nevada will make you think twice about ever venturing into the unknown corners of the Silver State. Let's begin with a story that started with a simple YouTube comment and ended with one of the most disturbing disappearances in Nevada history. In late 2014, a YouTube comment would set in motion events that would create one of Nevada's most chilling urban legends. The man behind the screen was Kenny Veach, a 47-year-old Las Vegas resident known to friends and family as an experienced desert hiker. On his YouTube channel, Snakebit MG, Kenny documented his solo adventures through Nevada's most remote and dangerous terrain. Kenny wasn't your typical weekend warrior. He was a seasoned outdoorsman who had explored countless caves and mine shafts throughout the Mojave and Great Basin deserts. He knew the dangers, the unstable ground, the risk of getting lost, the extreme temperatures that could kill an unprepared hiker in hours. But Kenny thrived on discovering places others were too afraid to explore. The comment that would seal his fate was posted on a video about Area 51. Kenny wrote, "That ain't nothing. I am a long-distance hiker. One time during one of my hikes out by Nellis Air Force Base, I found a hidden cave. The entrance to the cave was shaped like a perfect capital M. I always enter every cave I find, but as I began to enter this particular cave, my whole body began to vibrate. The closer I got to the cave entrance, the worse the vibrating became. Suddenly, I became very scared and hightailed it out of there. That was one of the strangest things that ever happened to me." The response from viewers was immediate and intense. People demanded to know more. Where was this cave? Could he find it again? What made him feel that strange vibration? Kenny initially brushed off the requests, but the pressure mounted. Finally, he announced he would return to find the M cave and film the entire journey. On October 14, 2014, Kenny posted his final video titled M Cave Hike. In it, he appeared unusually subdued. Gone was his typical enthusiasm for adventure. Instead, he seemed nervous, almost reluctant. He told his viewers he was heading back to the area near Nellis Air Force Base to find the cave that had scared him so badly. He promised to bring his camera and document everything. "I'm going back to find that cave," he said, staring directly into the camera. "If I don't come back, at least you'll know where I went." Those would be the last words Kenny Veach ever spoke to the world. On November 10, 2014, Kenny set out on his final hike. He left his Las Vegas home in the early morning hours, driving his white Honda CR-V toward the remote area near Nellis Air Force Base. The region Kenny was entering was notoriously dangerous. A maze of abandoned mine shafts, some used by the military for chemical disposal, scattered across terrain so rugged that even experienced search and rescue teams avoid certain areas. When Kenny failed to return home that evening, his girlfriend Sherion became concerned. But Kenny often stayed out overnight on his hikes, so she waited. One day passed, then 2. By the 3rd day, with no word from Kenny and his phone going straight to voicemail, Sherion contacted authorities. The search that followed was extensive. Nevada search and rescue teams, volunteers, and even fellow YouTubers scoured the desert. what they found only deepened the mystery. On November 22, searchers discovered Kenny's cell phone near an abandoned mineshaft in the Sheep Range. The phone was found roughly 10 hours hiking distance from where Kenny had parked his car. This suggested he had made it to the general area he intended to explore, but what happened next remained unknown. Here's where the story takes an even darker turn. Kenny's girlfriend Sherrion revealed that in the months leading up to his disappearance, Kenny had been struggling with severe depression. She told investigators that Kenny had expressed thoughts of suicide and had once said, "If I ever decided to take my own life, no one will ever find me." But what struck investigators as odd was what Kenny didn't bring on his final hike. Despite promising in his video to document everything with his GoPro camera, Kenny left all his recording equipment at home. For a man who had filmed dozens of cave explorations, this was completely out of character. The area where Kenny disappeared is littered with dangers beyond the obvious. Old mine shafts drop hundreds of feet into darkness. The landscape is so remote that cell phone service is non-existent. Temperatures can swing from over 100 degrees during the day to near freezing at night. And there are the rumors. Stories of drug operations, illegal dumping grounds, and worse, hidden in the desert's most inaccessible reaches. Search teams found Kenny's car at the head of a trail, but despite exhaustive efforts covering hundreds of square miles, no other trace of him was ever discovered. No clothing, no equipment, no remains. It was as if Kenny Veach had simply vanished into the desert air. The M Cave itself has never been found, despite countless amateur search expeditions. Some claim to have discovered caves shaped like the letter M, only to find them blocked with boulders or collapsed from within. Others report finding caves that match Kenny's description, but experience the same unexplained vibrations and overwhelming sense of dread that drove Kenny away during his first encounter. To this day, Kenny Veach remains missing. His disappearance has spawned theories ranging from accidental death to suicide to encounters with classified military operations. Conspiracy theorists suggest he found something he wasn't supposed to see. Others believe the desert simply claimed another victim. But perhaps the most chilling aspect of Kenny's story is how it mirrors the fate of other solo explorers who ventured too deep into Nevada's forbidden corners. The desert doesn't forgive mistakes, and it doesn't give up its secrets easily. Whatever happened to Kenny Veach in those remote mountains near Area 51, his story serves as a stark reminder. Some places are meant to remain unexplored, and some caves are better left unentered. December 13, 2009 was supposed to be just another day for 30-year-old Stephen Koicher. The freelance journalist from St. George, Utah, had been struggling financially, picking up odd jobs and writing assignments wherever he could find them. Like many young adults during the economic recession, Stephen was facing uncertainty about his future, but he remained optimistic about his prospects. What makes Stephen's story so disturbing isn't just that he disappeared, it's that we have security footage of the exact moment he vanished, and it raises more questions than it answers. Stephen was the kind of person who stayed in touch with family and friends. He was active in his church, reliable with his work commitments, and always let people know where he was going. So when he failed to show up for work and missed church services without explanation, people knew something was terribly wrong. The last anyone heard from Stephen was during a phone conversation with his mother on December 10, 2009. He seemed upbeat, discussing plans for Christmas and expressing optimism about finding more work. There was nothing in his demeanor that suggested he was planning to disappear or was in any kind of trouble. But what investigators discovered about Stephen's movements in the days leading up to his disappearance painted a picture that was anything but normal. Using cell phone records and credit card receipts, police were able to trace Stephen's activities during his final week. What they found was deeply disturbing. In the 7 days before he vanished, Stephen had driven nearly 100 miles in seemingly random patterns across Utah and Nevada. On December 10, the same day he spoke to his mother, Stephen drove from St. George to Salt Lake City, a 300-mile journey for no apparent reason. From Salt Lake City, Stephen continued west to Wendover, Nevada, where he stopped for gas. Then he drove another 100 miles to the Ruby Valley ranch of the Neff family. Stephen had previously dated their daughter, Anna Marie, and when he showed up unannounced, the Neffs were surprised but welcomed him for lunch. During the visit, Stephen told them he was on his way to visit family in Sacramento, California, but was unsure if he could continue due to bad weather. After 2 hours, he left, saying he had decided to return to Utah instead. This would be the last confirmed sighting of Stephen Koicher alive. What happened next is captured on security cameras, but it only deepens the mystery. At approximately noon on December 13, 2009, Stephen parked his silver Chevrolet Cavalier at the end of a cul-de-sac in the Sun City Anthem neighborhood of Henderson, Nevada, a upscale retirement community about 30 miles from Las Vegas. Security footage from a nearby home shows Stephen getting out of his car, walking around to the passenger side, and then walking down the sidewalk and out of frame. A few minutes later, another security camera captured Stephen's reflection in a car window as he retrieved an unknown object from his vehicle. He then walked away from the car and was never seen again. The location where Stephen parked is significant for several reasons. Sun City Anthem is a gated community populated primarily by retirees. Stephen had no known connections to anyone in the area. There were no businesses, attractions, or any apparent reason for a 30-year-old from Utah to be there. The cul-de-sac where he parked dead ends at the base of mountains with hiking trails leading into remote desert terrain. Stephen's car was found 4 days later, on December 17, when the Homeowners Association contacted his employer about the abandoned vehicle. The car was in perfect working order with a half tank of gas. Stephen's cell phone showed some activity over the 2 days following his disappearance, but investigators have never revealed the details of this activity. What made Stephen's disappearance even more mysterious was its timing. Just 1 week earlier, Susan Powell, a 28-year-old mother of two, had disappeared from her home in West Valley City, Utah, under suspicious circumstances. Both cases received significant media attention, and some people began speculating about a connection. In 2010, in a bizarre twist, Susan Powell's father-in-law and husband publicly claimed that Susan and Stephen had run off to Brazil together, suggesting they were having an affair. This theory was quickly debunked by investigators who found no evidence whatsoever linking the two cases. Both families dismissed these claims as desperate attempts to deflect suspicion in Susan's case. The search for Stephen Kuchar involved multiple agencies and hundreds of volunteers. Search teams scoured the desert areas surrounding Henderson, focusing on the mountainous terrain behind Sun City Anthem. Despite extensive efforts, including helicopter searches and ground teams with specialized equipment, no trace of Stephen was ever found. One of the most puzzling aspects of Stephen's case is the complete lack of digital footprints after December 13. His bank accounts were never accessed, his social security number was never used, and he never contacted family or friends. For someone to disappear so completely in the digital age requires either death or an extraordinary level of planning. Investigators explored every possible theory. Suicide was considered, but Stephen's family insisted he showed no signs of depression and was making plans for the future. Foul play was investigated, but there was no evidence of struggle or any indication Stephen was involved in dangerous activities. The possibility that he chose to disappear voluntarily was examined, but Stephen left behind no preparations for such a drastic step. The desert surrounding Henderson is unforgiving terrain. Temperatures in December can drop below freezing at night, and the mountainous areas are filled with hidden ravines, caves, and abandoned mines. If Stephen ventured into this wilderness unprepared, survival would have been unlikely. But the security footage raises troubling questions that have never been answered. Why did Stephen park in a residential area where he had no business being? What was the object he retrieved from his car? Where was he going when he walked away? Today, more than 14 years later, Stephen Kuchar remains missing. His case is still open, but investigators admit they have no new leads. "We know about as much now as we did the second we realized he was gone," said the detective in charge of the case in 2018. Stephen's disappearance serves as a reminder that even in our connected world, it's still possible for someone to vanish without a trace. The desert that surrounds Las Vegas and Henderson has claimed many victims over the years, but few cases are as haunting as that of the young journalist who walked into the Nevada wilderness and was never seen again. Sometimes the most terrifying disappearances are the ones that happen to people who should have been perfectly safe. In 1996, 4 German tourists, a couple and their 2 children, arrived in Nevada for what was supposed to be the vacation of a lifetime. They had planned a classic American Southwest road trip, complete with rental car, maps, and cameras to document their adventure. The Weiss family had done everything right. They had reserved their rental van in advance, studied maps of the area, and even purchased emergency supplies. Thomas and Martha Weiss, both in their 40s, were experienced travelers who had vacationed internationally before. Their children, Lisa, 12, and Michael, 8, were excited to see the American desert they had only seen in movies. Death Valley National Park was on their itinerary, a destination that draws hundreds of thousands of visitors each year. The park's otherworldly landscapes, from the salt flats of Badwater Basin to the colorful rocks of Artist's Palette, make it one of the most photographed places in America. For most visitors, it's a place of wonder and natural beauty. For the Weiss family, it became a death trap. The family was last seen on July 23, 1996, at a gas station in Baker, California, the gateway town to Death Valley. Security footage shows them purchasing water, snacks, and fuel for their rental van. Thomas can be seen studying a map with the clerk, pointing to areas within Death Valley they plan to visit. The children appear excited, pressing their faces against the windows of the gift shop while Martha selects postcards. Everything about their behavior suggested a normal family preparing for a day of sightseeing. Nothing indicated they were about to drive into one of the most dangerous situations imaginable. 3 days later, when the family failed to return their rental van, the agency contacted authorities. What followed was one of the largest search operations in Death Valley's history. The search would reveal a tragedy that continues to haunt investigators and park officials to this day. The Weiss family's rental van was found on July 27, 4 days after they were last seen. It was discovered abandoned on a dirt road approximately 15 miles from the main park road, stuck in sand near an area called Devil's Golf Course. The van's air conditioning had been running until the battery died and the engine had overheated. Inside the van, investigators found a scene that told a story of growing desperation. The family had consumed all their water and food. Maps were scattered across the dashboard, with handwritten notes and circled areas showing they had tried to navigate back to the main road. Most disturbing were the children's drawings found on the back seats, stick figures of their family with sad faces, and one drawing that simply showed the desert with the word "help" written in crayon. The van's windows were covered with handprints, evidence that the family had tried desperately to signal for help. But the area where they were stranded was so remote that no other vehicles would have passed by. What investigators couldn't understand was how the family had ended up so far off the main road. The dirt track where their van was found was unmarked and would have required several turns away from any established route. Park rangers familiar with the area said it was virtually impossible to end up there by accident. The search for the Weiss family members themselves began immediately. Search and rescue teams, park rangers, volunteers, and even military personnel scoured hundreds of square miles of desert. The area around Devil's Golf Course is particularly harsh, a landscape of salt formations that can cut through shoes and terrain so disorienting that even experienced hikers become confused. For weeks, the search turned up nothing. Then, in early August, searchers made the first grim discovery. Thomas Weiss's body was found approximately 2 miles from the van, in a ravine that was nearly invisible from ground level. He had clearly tried to walk out for help, following the dirt road back toward the main park route. The medical examiner determined he had died from dehydration and heat exposure. His clothes were torn and his hands were severely cut from trying to climb out of rocky washes. Martha's body was discovered 3 days later, about a mile from the van in the opposite direction. Unlike her husband, she had stayed closer to the vehicle, possibly to remain with the children. She was found in a small cave formation, suggesting she had sought shade during the extreme heat of the day, but the children were still missing. The search for Lisa and Michael continued for another month. Search teams used helicopters with heat-sensing equipment, brought in tracking dogs, and organized ground searches involving hundreds of volunteers. The children's disappearance captured international attention, with German media covering the story extensively and the German government offering assistance. On September 15, nearly 2 months after the family's disappearance, hikers discovered Lisa's body in a ravine approximately 3 miles from the van. She was found with her brother Michael, who had died trying to protect his younger sister. The children had clearly attempted to find water following a dry creek bed that they must have hoped would lead to a stream. The discovery location was so remote and well hidden that searchers had passed within 50 yards of it multiple times without seeing the bodies. The ravine was accessible only by climbing down a near-vertical rock face, a journey that would have been extremely dangerous for children. The official investigation concluded that the Weiss family had become disoriented while trying to reach a backcountry area of Death Valley. A wrong turn had led them onto increasingly primitive roads until their van became stuck. Faced with temperatures exceeding 120 degrees Fahrenheit, they had tried to walk out for help but succumbed to the desert. But several aspects of the case have never been satisfactorily explained. First, how did an experienced family with maps and a planned itinerary end up so far off course? The series of turns required to reach their final location would have taken them past multiple warning signs and onto roads that were clearly marked as dangerous. Second, why did the family split up? Standard survival advice for desert emergencies is to stay with your vehicle, where you're more likely to be found by rescuers. The fact that all 4 family members ended up in different locations suggests either panic or some external factor that forced them to leave the van. Most puzzling was the condition of the van itself. While the family had clearly been rationing their supplies and trying to conserve the battery, there was evidence they had also been trying to move the vehicle. Tire tracks showed multiple attempts to rock the van free from the sand, efforts that would have quickly drained their energy in the extreme heat. Some investigators have speculated that the family may have encountered other people in the desert, perhaps people involved in illegal activities who forced them to drive to the remote location. Death Valley's vast empty spaces have long been used by drug smugglers and other criminals precisely because of the area's isolation. Others suggest the family may have been following what they thought was a park service road, not realizing they were driving deeper into unmarked wilderness. The desert can be deceiving, with some illegal off-road trails appearing more established than they actually are. Whatever the truth, the Weiss family's tragedy serves as a stark reminder of Death Valley's dangers. The park now has enhanced warning systems and better marking of dangerous areas, partly in response to this case. Rangers estimate that dozens of people become temporarily lost in Death Valley each year, but most are found alive because they stay with their vehicles and conserve their energy. The German family's disappearance remains one of Nevada's most tragic mysteries. Their deaths highlight how quickly a family vacation can turn into a nightmare in the desert, and how even experienced travelers can fall victim to the unforgiving landscape of the American Southwest. Today, a small memorial near the park entrance reminds visitors of the Weiss family and others who have died in Death Valley. The inscription reads simply, "The desert is beautiful, but it does not forgive mistakes." As we reach the end of our journey through Nevada's most disturbing disappearances, a pattern emerges that should chill anyone planning to explore the Silver State's remote corners. Kenny Veach, Stephen Kocher, and the Weiss family all shared one fatal characteristic. They ventured alone into places where help was impossible to find. Kenny's case reminds us that even experienced outdoorsmen can meet their match in Nevada's wilderness. His disappearance near Area 51 serves as a warning about the dangers of exploring military-adjacent areas where strange phenomena and classified activities intersect with natural hazards. The M-Cave, if it exists, remains unfound, perhaps for good reason. Stephen Kocher's vanishing in Henderson shows us that disappearances don't only happen in remote wilderness. Sometimes the most unsettling mysteries occur in suburban neighborhoods, captured on security cameras but still impossible to explain. His case proves that in Nevada, danger can lurk anywhere, even in manicured retirement communities. The German family's tragedy in Death Valley demonstrates how quickly a normal vacation can turn deadly. Their disappearance highlights the cruel mathematics of desert survival. In extreme heat, the human body has a narrow window of survival, and a single wrong turn can mean the difference between life and death. But these 3 cases represent just the beginning of Nevada's missing persons epidemic. The state has one of the highest per capita rates of unexplained disappearances in the country. Every year, people vanish into the desert, leaving behind abandoned cars, scattered belongings, and families desperate for answers. The Nevada desert keeps its secrets. Mine shafts drop hundreds of feet into darkness. Flash floods can sweep away evidence in minutes. Wild animals and extreme weather can erase all traces of human presence. But perhaps most terrifying is the sheer vastness, over 110 square miles where a person could disappear and never be found. Search and rescue officials in Nevada will tell you that the desert doesn't discriminate. It has claimed experienced hikers and weekend tourists, local residents and international visitors, young and old, prepared and unprepared. The common thread isn't lack of experience or poor planning, it's underestimating the environment they're entering. If you must explore Nevada's remote areas, remember these rules that might save your life. Never travel alone. The buddy system isn't just for children, it's for anyone entering the wilderness. Every person who disappeared in our stories was alone when they vanished. Tell someone your exact route and expected return time. Don't deviate from your plan, and don't extend your trip without calling to update your contacts. Carry multiple communication devices. Cell phones don't work in much of Nevada, But satellite communicators and emergency beacons can summon help from anywhere. Stay with your vehicle if you become stranded. Cars are much easier to spot from aircraft than people, and they provide shelter from the elements. Carry more water than you think you need. In Nevada's heat, dehydration can become life-threatening in hours, not days. But the most important advice is this: respect the desert's power. Nevada's wilderness has been claiming lives for over a century, from early pioneers to modern adventurers. The landscape that appears empty and harmless from the highway becomes a maze of hidden dangers once you leave the main roads. Some places in Nevada are best admired from a distance. Some caves are better left unexplored. Some dirt roads should remain untraveled. The desert doesn't care about your experience level, your equipment, or your good intentions. It only cares about one thing: survival of the fittest. Kenny Veach thought he was fit enough to find the M cave and return safely. Stephen Kocher believed he was just taking a short walk in a suburban neighborhood. The Weiss family assumed they were following a safe route through a national park. They were all wrong. Nevada's missing persons cases serve as warnings written in tragedy. They remind us that the Silver State's beauty comes with a price, and that price is sometimes higher than anyone expects to pay. The next time you're driving through Nevada's empty highways, looking out at those endless vistas of desert and mountains, remember the stories you've heard tonight. Remember that somewhere out there, people are still missing, their fates unknown, their stories unfinished. And remember that Nevada never gives up its secrets willingly. The desert is still waiting, patient and eternal, for the next person who thinks they can conquer its mysteries alone. Don't let that person be you.